Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 18th episode of Host a Pro, where disruptive influencers talk about e-commerce marketing. Today we have Matt Bailey with us. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Rakabet. How are you doing today?
Amazing. How are you?
Amazing as well. Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation to be here. I've been looking forward to it.
Same here, same here. We're going to speak about data and how does it support e-commerce brands with their growth today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
just before diving into all the data stuff, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Why data?
So I started building websites, real estate websites in the mid to late 90s. And it was completely different from, during my day job. I worked with the realtors and offices. And I even remember my boss telling me, don't spend so much time on this internet thing. But I was building sites and for commercial properties. And all of a sudden, I had other realtors approaching me wanting to list their properties on my websites. I learned I could make money by not selling properties, but by listing properties, and that's much easier. So I started developing a business around that. Eventually, it was one night, I'm sitting down and I look at my clock and I've got 2 hours because I have to be somewhere. And I asked myself, well, if I have a 2 hours, what's the one thing I can do that will make the most impact? What's the most efficient thing that I can do that will make the most money? And I couldn't answer that question. And so that's what started me on data and analytics is I wanted to know, where do I put my time to maximize the revenue I'll get out of it? And what I found just blew my mind. It set me on course then to focus primarily on analytics as a source of asking questions, answering questions, finding revenue gold and profit gold. That's where it all started, and that has just informed all of my marketing ever since.
Okay, what a journey. So, a lot of e-commerce brands, and especially today after all the iOS updates and everything, are kind of asking themselves, okay, so what kind of answers can data give me today?
Well, even with the iOS updates, and this is one of the things in the email marketing community, especially, there was, a lot of anger, a lot of, people were upset. And I think what's happened is that's kind of settled down now. And what we're seeing is that the open rates maybe a little lower, but again, it's what should we expect to see? And so if we're not getting the data, we should just expect the open rates to be lower. Consistency. If they're consistent, then we're okay. And it's mainly is open rate. We all know it's a muddy metric. It was muddy before the update. It's muddy now. Clicks are anything that's clickable is measurable, and that's where I focus my attention. Opens, it's muddy, but as long as I'm consistent now, post update, I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Okay, please explain that, because I don't think, I think I'm getting where, I'm saying where you're getting with consistency. Obviously, it's my way to see trends, but can you dive a little bit, deeper into that, and why consistency with data is so important to have to start with before starting to analyze it?
Absolutely. So the most important thing, and this just gets to analysis skills. And one of the best analysis skills is starting with a measurement such as an average, a baseline, something to compare to. If you're just looking at data and you have nothing to compare to, then you don't know, number one, if there's a problem. Number two, you don't know how big the problem is. So you have to have some baseline. Now, you can get that baseline from past campaign data. And you can also get the baseline from an average of your past campaign performance. So there's a couple ways of developing that baseline that then gives you that feedback when you look at a new campaign that, well, compared to the average, this campaign's doing great. Compared to my last few campaigns of the same time, same offer, same call to action, it's doing great. And it's doing this much better. So now you can identify what are the particular parts that are helping it perform better, and you can report easier that it's performing better, and here's why. Because you've got a baseline. That's the key.
Baselines, definitely. And let's say, what would be the major or the top 5 data points that as an e-commerce brand that's starting to grow, starting to scale, I should look at?
That is a great question. Top 5 data points. Wow. So number 1, I would be looking at source of sales. I would be looking at average cart value, and I would also be looking at source of new customers and also existing customers. What am I doing to get new customers? What are my best channels of getting new customers? And also the efficiency of those channels. What am I paying per channel in order to get those customers in? The customers I already have, what's my average cart value? How can I increase that cart value? How can I increase the sales frequency? So it all comes back to, what do you want? Do you want more customers, more revenue, more profit? Because each one of those answers carries with it specific measurements to that goal. So, top 5 depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to go for brand recognition, that's a complete different set of metrics. So, great question. I think maybe I've given 5 for each. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I totally agree. Eventually, it does depend on the goal, right? And maybe, before starting to analyze all those numbers and all those data points and KPIs, start looking on, what's important for your business. If you're looking for profit, let's see what impacts profit.
absolutely. And once you ask about profit, you see, if I'm just looking at, I want more customers. Well, now it's all just numbers. What channel gives me the most customers? Which, how am I keeping those customers? It's all number based. But as soon as I go profit, well, now I'm looking at my cost per customer, my cost per customer per channel, and so now I'm developing more financial metrics that help me compare the channels, help me compare different activities. So yes, your goal establishes what metrics are going to be important to meet that goal. It all starts though, and here's fundamentally, I think the problem people have with analytics. A lot of people open up analytics and they get this freeze. Like, I don't know where to go from here. I see the dashboard. Everything looks good, I guess. I'm making some sales, but we get the dashboard and it doesn't. I think people expect this big red arrow to come out of the sky and point to right there. That's what's important. You need to look at that. That doesn't happen. And I've described it. It's like walking into a library with thousands of books and expecting insight, expecting to learn something. You need to start approaching analytics first with a question. What is it that you want to know? Is it, I want to increase sales? How do I increase sales? Now you start answering that question, and it starts out having nothing to do with the data. It starts out with, what's your strategy? What are you trying to do? And how does that happen? Then we associate, well, if that's what you want to know, you'll need these numbers to then crunch together and give you your feedback.
So there's a journey between data and insight, basically, and it starts with your strategy, like always.
Yes.
It's amazing because, typically the journey that the people are going through, as you just described in regards to data, is, okay, data, let's look at the numbers. But basically, once we kind of assemble this, big question and just put it into, small question, then we can say what data can be actually used in order to answer those questions, right?
Absolutely. And it's something also I've noticed in the training world. So I do training and digital marketing. And most times when I look at the training agenda, I see analytics as last. It's saved for the last part of the last day or the last, when everyone's burnt out and done. I don't do that. Analytics starts at strategy. Analytics starts with, I want to accomplish this. And in order to show that I've accomplished this, I need this metric. I need this KPI to show what's happening to get there. And so it starts at the strategy. It's not an add-on at the end that, oh yeah, we need to measure.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a combined effort from the beginning of knowing what I need.
Can you give me some examples of, mistakes brands do with data?
They don't look at it, number one. Um, they don't look at it, and number two, they don't understand what they're looking at when they look at it. Prime example, we're coming into the holiday season. It's a big push for retailers, and one of the worst mistakes I've ever seen is I'm trying to think. I think about 70% of their sales were directly attributed to paid search in one way or another. Paid search was their number one method of gaining sales during the season. Well, a new social media came out and they wanted to get involved with the social media. Well, where do we get the money from? Let's take it from our paid search budget because it's one of the biggest we've got, and let's move that money into trying out this new social media. Biggest mistake you could make, because at that point, looking at all their historic data, for every dollar they spent in paid search, they were creating $12 in revenue. So
That's
first of
very
all,
impressive.
yeah. So first of all, you take that money away out of the paid search budget, you've now got less to spend. So you're going to make less. But also, you're making $12 for every $1. You take that out and you've just drastically divided your revenue and your profit. And you've put it into something brand new that returned nothing because you didn't do it right. And, or you're just trying this out. And so the biggest thing that I see companies doing is when they want a new initiative, they take the money from the wrong place and they
Yeah.
put it in the wrong place in order to try and make something happen. But in reality, you're not just taking, you're not just taking a couple $1,000s out of your budget. You're taking tens of thousands out of your revenue, and they don't think that way.
Yeah, it reminds me of, there is this BCG model, I think, you learn in business school, where you have the ongoing, kind of the milking cow. This is not where you take your money from, right? You need to understand. Right. So right. What would be the places you do take money from? Talking about testing and understanding how to expand to new channels.
Yeah.
So where would be, the channels? Hey, we say, okay, if I have this 70%, 12x ROAS, amazing. I'm not going to touch it for anything in the world, but probably. And what would be the budget you would recommend to put aside in terms of percentage from your total budget into testing and understanding which new channels can match, or at least, come to some level of revenue as the milking cow channel?
Well, and you get to a great point there of a testing budget. A testing budget, because you should always be testing. So that's one thing. So I kind of grew up in the agency model, and I started out in an agency where they developed websites, and then it was a separate service to optimize those websites. I hated that model because once an agency finishes designing a website, they're done. They don't want anything to do with it. It's a project that they have finished. The problem is a website in its initial existence is not perfect. It's far from perfect because you need testing and adaptation and changes and optimization, because it's like saying my first attempt is the best attempt and it's as good as I'm going to get. And that we all know that's not true. So having a testing budget, and this is one thing that when I started my agency, that was what we focused on is, okay, now that your site's built, now the work starts. And your website is never finished. So we need to have a designer, developer, someone who's on call that can make these changes as we learn, as we want to try different landing pages, as we want to try different campaigns. That testing budget, I think, is where then also you pull from that now let's try this new social media. Let's try this new platform, see what it's about, see if it's right for us, see if our audience is there, do that, but don't take away from the golden calf. Don't take away from what makes the money. Not at all.
For sure. And I totally agree. a new website or a new channel is just a thesis, basically. Just an idea. No one knows if it will work. We just worked, I can talk from my own experience. We just worked on a whole new, brand new website. Lots of work was put into it. And basically from day one, okay, now we're starting the work of testing. Now we're starting to see what's working actually versus what we had before. And let's improve it and let's match the KPIs and let's, perform better than the old one. And this is how you actually work all the time with your budgets, right?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I think a lot of times people put their money into trying to make something new happen or try to fix something where, and I learned this in the direct marketing world, when something works, you throw more money at it. And if it works really well, you throw a lot more money at it, rather than trying something new that's unproven and that's not providing a return. And that's something we can learn from that direct marketing model in our digital marketing model. Is we need to know the channels that absolutely work all the time and look at what it's contributing, and then take the same amount and invest back into that channel, because it's predictable, it's reliable, and that's where you want to invest.
And this is also how data is so connected with strategy, right? Eventually,
Absolutely.
it's about what are you focusing your budget and efforts. No growing e-commerce brand has all the resources in the world. Eventually, you need to focus on what's working. That works, okay, amazing. Let's just put more budget into it, as you said, and obviously understand what would be the glass ceiling of that channel as well. Again, using data.
Yeah, and data and analytics gives you the freedom to say no. That's what I love. I go back to, I started using Twitter when it first came out, and, was very active in it. But what I was doing was also tracking my links. I was tracking anything that came out of Twitter. And after I think about like 3 years of use, I was like, no more, done. It's not providing a return. I don't see where it's contributing, but I've got these channels over here that are contributing tens of thousands of dollars. Why am I wasting time here? So that's what I love about data, is that freedom to say, I don't have to put more time there in something I really didn't enjoy in the first place. So
yeah. So for e-commerce brands that are scaling today and are really looking to smash it in 2022, what would be the best tip you can give them planning their way into the next year?
One of the things that I'm preaching this constantly right now. If you're developing e-commerce and building your brand, do it on something you own. Own something. Don't rely on third-party platforms to host your content, to build your business. I mean, we've seen this with Facebook a couple of times now where, years ago, everyone's building their business on Facebook. They're building their presence. And then all of a sudden, Facebook changes the algorithm. And now your organic updates get to less than 2% of your followers. So it drastically changes any involvement there in that platform. It drastically changes how brands had to react to it, because they invested into someone else's property that they could change at any time. I love social media. Well, I don't love social media. I like social media. The problem is social media now is not what it was 5 or 10 years ago. 5 or 10 years ago, you could build a presence and you could use that to build your business. Today's social media wants you to build your audience, build your business on their platform. And they reward the people that build on their platform. But the moment you link to your site, the moment you link to your content, it goes down in the algorithm. So the best thing we can do is build our own and use social media to build our sites, to build our subscribers, to build new customers. Use social media the way it uses you. That's my message.
Okay, that's an amazing. I'm going to quote it. And I love how we got back to properties after we began the meeting with the real estate. So
yeah, absolutely. It's always good to own. It's always good to own because that's an asset and it grows in value. Otherwise, it's someone else's platform. I'm renting their audience, and I'm building their content. I'm building their audience. So we need to, I think, take back some of that ownership mentality that I'm building my site, my business, my brand. If I want to change something, I can change it. If I want to send an email to my customers, I can do it and they'll get it. So there's a lot more freedom actually when you look at things through that standpoint.
For sure. Matt, can I ask you a personal question?
Yes, maybe. We'll see.
What's your favorite report on your dashboard?
Favorite report on my dashboard? Oh my goodness. That has to be that's my visitors by source. That is probably the first report I go to, and that is my channel, my source, my channel report, because I've got it set up where it shows me the value of these visits, and I can see which channel is providing the most value for the time and effort that I put into it. So it's like a nice, healthy gauge of my efforts, and it just reinforces where do I focus to get the most out of it.
Very cool. So just think about what's your the report you're seeing each morning when you wake up. Matt, thank you so much. It was full with value and lots of insights based on data. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so it's much. A pleasure. A pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for the invitation, Rakafet, and wonderful conversation. Great questions. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you. Toda raba.
Bye.